Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, today I'm going to be talking about the racist reasons why the American right wing wants to merge with Russia. Um, Underneath the surface of MAGA trying to create, this alleged peace between Ukraine and Russia, there's actually a right wing element in the Republican Party, obviously, that wants peace with Russia, not because of some sort of pragmatic, peace, anti-war type standpoint, but because of white supremacy. They see they see the world as the white man is in a civilizational struggle, and therefore they need to merge with Russia for self-preservation reasons. That's how people like Tucker Carlson see the world. They won't admit it, but it's how they see the world, right? And I actually wrote something last night, and I think this kind of um, more eloquently summarizes what I'm about to say here, or some of my thoughts in this video. So let me read this right here. So, however, the elephant in the room about why many voices in MAGA want this merger with Russia is not simply out of pragmatism, but also because of white existential dread for fear of being replaced, which is pushed by people such as Tucker Carlson, despite the irony that Russian bombs in the Middle East helped make refugees going into Europe. Belarus, a Russian puppet state, helps refugees go into Russia's foe of Poland, for example. Russia uses refugees as political weapons to create anti-EU nationalism. Figures such as Tucker Carlson, who argued in favor of peace with Putin, for example, was publicly praised by white supremacist Jared Taylor for advocating for a white state and self-determinism. The further irony of Tucker is that he's inverting anti-colonialism and multicultural thought to advocate for white separatism, though European colonialism, typically of the British variety, created the need for marginalized groups to fight for equality and civil rights. Tucker's racism uses reverse psychology in one hand, where he can lambast and make fun of minorities for, let's just say, being statistically behind or being more impoverished, right? Or being culturally deficient, as they might say. Yet, however, when minority groups attempt to uplift themselves, he and others like him gaslight them to argue for white separatism on the same multicultural, self deterministic grounds. They paint separatism as diversity. A racist like Tucker are essentially so racist they have contingencies and excuses for it from all different directions. So that's what Tucker is essentially doing. He's appropriating the more left wing anti colonial sentiments, which have been very effective at unraveling colonialism and challenging the authority of people who look like Tucker, right? And they're trying to kind of pretend like they're the woe is me oppressed white people across the globe, right? Even though the vast majority of the resources are being sucked up by the global north, the vast majority of the banking, global finances, currency, medicine, what have you, is also owned by the global north. And the irony of Tucker Carlson, big baby, over here with his woe is me for the white man mentality is that people like Tucker is they'll talk about how superior white people are all day. But then how are you going to be so superior, but then also blame the world for everything? If you created the world, you created the problems of this world. And that doesn't mean and that doesn't mean like the problems were created because other people who don't look like you exist. Rather, maybe you're just to blame for your own problems. So you know what I'm saying? How are you going to be superior, but then at the same time just blame everybody else but yourself for your own actions, indifferent to everybody else, just your own actions, your own economic systems that are now exploiting you and enforcing, your children's housing to be so expensive they have to live with you longer and they can't go out and afford a house. That wasn't on black people. That wasn't on Asian people. That wasn't on Native Americans. That wasn't on Pacific Islanders and Hawaiians. That was on Adam Smith. Communism wasn't created by some black person. That was created by y'all. It's like all this existential dread happening amongst like far right white people. Who's really to blame for all this? Who was the one who was advocating for free markets and open markets and all this type of stuff? That was y'all. But you want to benefit from it, but then you want to take the negative externalities and then gaslight and scapegoat them on everybody else. Blaming it on Jews, blaming it on black people, blaming it on everybody else. Maybe being so quote unquote genius bit you in the butt. You know what I'm saying? Like, if is the world really in this utopian state? It's almost like their racism is just an excuse for their own ineptitude, blaming everybody else for it. In the irony of in further, the irony of Tucker Carlson is he is so racist, is that he is trapped in his own dialectic. He's trapped in his own yin yang struggle. He's just walking in circles, right? Imagine he walks through a door and then he thinks he left and then but he keeps just coming through the same door, right? He's trapped in a loop of his own design, of his own making, right? So because his cure for the modern world, right, is that white people need to have their own separate identity or whatever, right? But the irony is that that is what created the situation that created your sadness right now. You know what I'm saying? Like this, like that white separatism colonial mentality is what created the need for other groups to lift themselves up from their oppression. Like it's in other words, it's like he's just going back and forth. He wants to go back to a world that created the world that he is so sad about, rather than transcending that position and maybe going to a post-racial, type thing or whatnot, right? And you can tell he's so angry, right? They have rights. Why can't I have rights? And everything like that. What rights don't you not have? Do you not have, Tucker? What privileges do you not have? When is one day you've ever gone hungry, Tucker? You went to a Swiss boarding school that you got kicked out of just for your parents to put you into uh some other La Jolla Country Day School or whatever. Or no, they put you into like St. George's Academy or something, or school, which is one of the most prestigious schools in the country. When have you ever suffered, Tucker? This is why people. So put it this way: if people are losing respect for white people, and which I don't want people to lose respect for anyone because of the color of their skin. But let's just say that if the impetus for all this rage is white people feel like people are losing respect for them, maybe it's because of people like Tucker. You know what I'm saying? I don't think anybody hates white people. You know what I'm saying? Why do people go to vacation in Europe if they hate white people so much? Why do people go on their honeymoons in Venice and Paris and all this, right? Of all different colors or whatever, right? They're not coming over here. You know what I'm saying? They're not coming over here to colonize. There's a difference between a colonizer and an immigrant and a refugee. What Europe is experiencing is immigration and refugees. What uh, the ancestors of people like Tucker Carlson did was they colonized and settled places. That's the difference. They're not being colonized by refugees or something, because many of those refugees, as I said, are the result of people who look like Tucker Carlson messing up the world. And now they want to cry about it. And they want to become little Nazis and all this type of stuff. The sheer lack of awareness and self-responsibility. Or many of these people, they have nothing else in their lives but the potential of violence and hatred. And that's it. So therefore, Tucker's further dangerous because he's able to feed these people this self-loathing mentality. And then all it takes is for one loser with a firearm to go do something crazy, because now he sees himself as a crusader knight in this civilizational clash of the races, because people like Tucker Carlson have normalized it so much. You know what I'm saying? And this is and the difference too is that what I'm noticing is that white supremacy is the same no matter where you go. So, but Tucker Carlson is trying to make it sound like all versions of, let's just say, Pan-Africanist thought is all the same across the world because he needs it to be all the same, right? Because he needs a defined enemy to channel his rage at. Even though I, as an African American, my people's journey is totally different than that of Black South Africans, right? You know what I'm saying? So how they articulate their problems or whatnot is really none of my business. I can disagree with the language, but at the same time, I can also understand why they were angry. But just because they're saying some crazy stuff about kill the Boer or something has nothing to do with me in the United States and how people like Tucker Carlson and his ancestors oppressed my ancestors. So don't try to create an equivalency with Pan African or whatever person of color movements rising up or whatever, or using anger or violence or whatever like that to like drag me over in my unique situation, in my people's unique situation here in the United States. As we try to come to consciousness, we're essentially just trying to come to consciousness. It's not even at the expense of white people, just trying to understand who we are, because that was actually erased. And trying to come to with grips about how we truly fit into a civilization which didn't even fully want to assimilate us to begin with, thus creating a parallel divergent culture of black culture that we've had to take on as our own in order to have a sense of being and wellness and mental health in a country where essentially a lot of things are anti-black. I don't really know too many things that are anti-white, but I sure know a lot of things that are anti-black. But I guess I'm playing the victim Olympics here, right? And maybe I'm lapping you right now. But when you see the world in some weird competition or something like that or whatever, a lot of people become narcissists, and it's like nobody's even talking about you, bro. Like when people are talking about uplifting themselves, particularly in countries where historically they have always been oppressed or something, for an entitled person like Tucker Carlson to be like, well, we deserve rights too. It's like nobody was talking to you, one, and B, what rights do you not have? You've never been disenfranchised, Tucker. You've never been denied the right to vote. You can live in 90, you can live basically wherever you want in the United States. Even if you were to go into, let's just say, the blackest neighborhood in America or something like that, you're allowed to go there. And if anything, the police are probably going to protect you more than the citizens of those communities that you just lived, you just gentrified and moved into. You've never been oppressed. And the sad truth is that Tucker Carlson is so far gone. I think he's literally like seeing hallucinations. You know what I'm saying? He's literally talking about how he like was seeing demons and stuff. I think that he's on some medication. I think he's on something. You know what I'm saying? And I think that there's more of a troubled past with Tucker Carlson than what he wants to admit. But rather than maybe dealing with that troubledness or something like that, rather, he must be emulating the hatred of those who abused him potentially, or all of this hatred is just a defense mechanism to like basically not have to deal with whatever sort of like vulnerable, untreated trauma that's really going on in his brain. So I'm actually saying this a little bit out of love for Tucker as a human to human. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't hate the guy. He's just overwhelmingly disappointing of a human being. To have all the money, everything he could possibly want, and to still be a fucking baby. A big baby. He is a big fucking baby. It's ridiculous. And now I have to worry about you committing treason, which is essentially what you're doing by flirting with Russia and helping to promote their psychological operations and talking points within the United States. You're gone. He's too far gone when it comes to him, right? Let me pause real quick. because there's some other stuff I need to show you. So here we go, right? So this is a video. Tucker Carlson, I was mauled by a demon, right? I think Tucker Carlson, man, has had some sort of break with reality. And the irony is that like his racism is the only thing holding him together. But of course, the Christian nationalists, who are a big part of the MAGA movement, not to be confused with just Christians, a specific type of Christian. I'm not here to hate on Christians. I consider myself a Christian. But the Christian nationalists, right, they probably want to believe what Tucker says because their politics, both when it comes to patriarchy, race, gender, orientation, are all in alignment with each other, right?
Presence of evil is kickstarting people to wonder about the good.
That's what happened to me.
That's what happened to you?
Oh yeah, I had a direct experience with it.
In the milieu of journalism, or just...
Nope, in my bed at night, and I got attacked while I was asleep with my wife and 4 dogs in the bed and mauled. Physically mauled.
In a spiritual attack by a demon?
Yeah, by a demon. Or by something unseen that left...
Is that right?
Claw marks on my sides, on my...
So he left physical marks?
Oh, they're still there. Yeah. A year and a half ago.
Was your wife terrified? I know you were.
I wasn't. I was totally confused. I woke up and I couldn't breathe, and I thought I was going to suffocate, and I walked around outside, and then I walked in, and my wife and dogs had not woken up, and they're very light sleepers. And then I had these terrible pains on my rib cage and on my shoulder, and I was just in my boxer shorts, and I went and flipped on the light in the bathroom, and I had 4 claw marks on either side underneath my arms and on my left shoulder, and they're bleeding.
Wait, they were bleeding?
They're bleeding, yeah. No, they're actual claw marks. And I sleep on my side, so I wasn't clawing myself. I don't have long nails. And they didn't fit my hands anyway. But yeah, that happened. So I'm not from a world where things like that happen. I never heard of anything like that happening before. I had no idea what that was. I knew it was spiritual immediately.
You did? Okay, that was going to be my question.
Yeah. I don't understand to this day. I'm not going to put it more...
You didn't try to refute the spiritual part in your own mind. You went right into the...
Well, it didn't make any sense, and it doesn't now. But I'm not from a, what do they call it, faith tradition that talks about things like that or even acknowledges their existence. Like, there's nothing like that. I've never heard anybody say anything like that in my whole life.
What was the next day like?
Well, the next morning I woke up and I thought, that was the weirdest dream I've ever had. And then I saw blood on my sheets, and I realized that was not a dream at all. I called my assistant, who was like the only evangelical Christian I know, well enough to call with something bizarre like that, totally bizarre like that. And she said, oh yeah, no, that happens. Yeah, people are attacked in their bed by demons. What? What are you even talking about? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not leaving anything out, and I'm not pretending to understand that. I can only say what happened to me, and that did happen to me, and then I was seized with this very intense desire to read the Bible, which I then started without any study aids or anything. I bought a Bible that didn't have any. I'm not interested in editorializing in the Bible. I just want to read it and see what's in there myself. I have very low levels of trust for Christian pastors, most of whom, I'm just not a fan at all. And sorry to say that, but that's how I feel. And so I don't want to hear other people's opinions. I just want to see what's in there. And so I spent a year and a half reading it, and then I started rereading it. And it was just a transformative experience for me, but I'm not, holding myself out as someone from whom you could get theological advice, because I'm
Sure,
not.
of course.
I mean, I don't know. I don't understand any of it. But yeah, that happened.
God allowed the demon?
I have no idea what happened. All I know is I was dead asleep with my wife and dogs, and I woke up with claw marks on my rib cage underneath my arms, and it didn't even make sense.
All right, so there was that, right? And it's like, I know a lot of people want to say anything is possible or whatever, but it's just like you got 4 dogs sleeping next to you. I mean, I don't know, like maybe something's there. I don't, and the one thing too is like, why didn't the guy ask of like, I'm not trying to discredit what you consider to be your spiritual, encounter or whatnot, but were you also on any medication? Because I guarantee you, if like a Catholic priest were to show up or something like that and do some sort of investigate an exorcism or something like that, they're going to actually ask some of those like hardcore scientific investigative questions. I would probably assume or something, and they're not going to be like, oh, okay, oh wow, we 100% know. Like they actually have their own kind of like approach to like encountering the spiritual, and they're very cautious about what they will consider to be a miracle or a sort of encounter with like a demonic force or something like that, right? And so I know a lot of people who are maybe religious or something are just like, how dare you question him or something. But then again, this does not rule out the fact of Tucker having some like pre-existing psychological condition, being on prescription drugs of some sort, maybe mixing alcohol with prescription drugs to a certain extent, maybe having a history of, ideations. You never know. But uh, Tucker just seems kind of out there. You know what I'm saying? And we're never going to truly know a lot about Tucker's past, right? Because I don't think he wants to be honest about that, right? I think for a person in his position, if you're going to make such bold statements, you need to be very honest about who you are. But I think that that fear of being naked with his audience or something like that and showing, like, for example, Tucker, why did you not get accepted by the CIA? You know, something had to have happened. You know what I'm saying? Particularly with your father's connections with the Voice of America, your education, your background, the era in which you probably tried to join, and everything like that. You were kind of, in theory, kind of a prime candidate in the blue blood vein of a CIA spook. So why didn't you get in? So something had to go there. And you got to think to like an SF-80, I think this is the security clearance form, right? Either drugs, either some sort of potential sexual encounter or something like that. I think particularly if you're going in this with the CIA, they'll ask some pretty like weird questions that I don't think that other agencies might ask. I don't know. Uh, Financial problems potentially. You just never know. Or maybe even a history of depression or mental health issues or something. Some sort of issue, some sort of personal indicator that would probably make them feel that this person, even if trustworthy to a certain extent, might have a severe, lack of judgment somewhere or whatnot, right? So why didn't that happen, right? And I guarantee you that what Tucker Carlson might, blame it on affirmative action or something, right? He might say, oh, the reason why I didn't get into Yale is because I didn't have a minority scholarship. The reason why I didn't get accepted to the CIA is because I didn't speak fluent Spanish and they were recruiting things because of affirmative action. Yada this, yada that, right? I guarantee you that there's no sense of self responsibility, I don't think, really with him. Why did you get kicked out of your Swiss boarding school? There's something in Tucker's past that he's not 100% being forthcoming with, right? And that's why I suspect that his right wingness, is kind of just one of the many fillers to kind of hide that vulnerability. Um, So there's that, right? But regardless, the whole thing about why I did this video was about Russia, right? And to further explain why racists and white supremacists want to merge with Russia is just very obvious, right? It's because they see civilization in a conflict, and they see like the white people are going extinct or something, which is kind of nonsense. Um, and they want to work with Russia, even though they want to go to war with China or Iran or the Islamic countries, right? So it's kind of funny that they're pacifists on some things, but pacifists not on other things, right? So that's why I don't buy this whole notion of Donald Trump being a pacifist. He's just doing a geostrategic pivot to what he considers to be foes worthy of the white man's attention. And then people will try to, like, gaslight Democrats or the left or anybody who supports the Ukraine war by saying, look at all those Nazis in Ukraine or something. Look at the Azov battalion. What about Bandera? What about all these type of things, right? Comedians like Tim Dillon or whatever his name is, even talking about stuff like that, right? And guess what? We have Nazis in America too. Doesn't mean that I don't support the United States. You know what I'm saying? Like, trying, like, what a flawed way of arguing it for. Like, we're funding Nazis in Ukraine. Guess what? To fight Nazis in Russia. Because there's Nazis over there too, Tim Dillon. You know what I'm saying? Like, like what? You know what I'm saying? We have Nazis in our own government. So how would you want it? Do you want the Nazis united, or do you want the Nazis, fighting each other or something? I don't know. And I would probably think that a Tucker Carlson is like, no, they shouldn't fight each other at all. They're great people, right? But all the Nazi stuff aside, there's also the whole notion of the vast majority of people in Ukraine aren't Nazis. You know what I'm saying? Just like, and they're defending themselves, right? They're defending themselves from a country that invaded them. So one way to win an argument against people who say that the West is funding Nazis, just say, A, Russia has also gotten into bed with Nazis, with some of their mercenary groups and stuff like that, doing war crimes in Ukraine and Africa and stuff like that. So what are you talking about? And we also have Nazis here in the United States. In any time people even try to talk about Nazism even being a problem in the United States, y'all want to bury it and say it doesn't exist, or people are being sensational. So this whole notion of I can't support Ukraine because some Nazis are there is just kind of foolish to me, because it's like Russia is not on our side. Is it jacked up? Sure, it's jacked up. But at the end of the day, though, too, is at least in a weird, odd way, or something like that, those Ukrainians of that particular persuasion or whatnot are kind of on the side fighting for my interests, fighting for my security, fighting for the hard work that my grandfather, a black man from South Georgia who fought in World War II, gave to the United States of America. Russia didn't do, like, I mean, thank you. I mean, they were allies then, but at the end of the day, they also lost the Cold War. You know what I'm saying? Like, Russia could have had peace with the United States a long time ago. Is it all on the United States, or is it on the ambitions of one ambitious ex-KGB agent who has been the dictator of Russia since I was in the 8th grade, and now I'm approaching my 40s? It's just very interesting. But like I said, when it comes to, so this is a video from uh the Charlottesville March with Richard Spencer, and they're actually singing songs praising Russia.
Somebody drop something.
You can see we are peacefully walking. Which way are we going? Doing nothing wrong? Greg!
Greg, you need to...
Which way?
Stay in the crosswalk. Right on. Space out, space out.
We're by the statue. It's covered up in black. Well, that's a sad sight.
You will not replace us!
You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us!
Go, Mike, do it.
Hello, Charlottesville, we're back, and we have a message. We're back, and we're going to keep coming back. You will not replace us. You will not erase us.
Gentlemen, let's sing a song that you and I know good and well. Oh, I wish I was the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland, where I was born in early on a frosty morning. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Oh, I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray. In Dixie's land we'll take our stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south of Dixie. Away, away, away down south of Dixie. Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland where I was born in early on a frosty morning. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south of Dixie. Away, away, away down south of Dixie. You will not replace us.
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 You will not replace us. You will not replace us. You will not replace us.
You will not replace us. You will not replace us. You will not replace us. You will not replace us. You will not replace us. You will not replace us.
Russia is our friend.
Russia is our friend. Russia is our friend. Russia is our friend.
The South will rise
Again. The South will rise again.
Russia
Is our friend.
The South is our friend. The South
Will rise again.
Russia is our friend. The South will rise again. Russia
Is our friend. The South will rise again. Russia is our friend. The South will rise again. Dumbledore's army isn't real, and you're not in it. Harry Potter isn't real. Harry Potter isn't real. Harry Potter isn't real. Harry
Oh, sorry about that. So, anyways, right? So I just wanted to kind of show you that, and I'm actually going to play a video of whatchamacallit, Richard Spencer going on a crazy rant real quick.
It's time for Donkey of the Day.
Donkeys of the day, ask Charlemagne.
I'm a Democrat, so being donkey of the day is a little bit of a mixed blend.
So like a donkey. Hee-haw. Okay. Donkey of the day.
Breakfast Club, bitches.
Now, I've been called a lot in my 23 years that donkey of the day is a new one.
Yes, Donkey of the Day for Wednesday, November 6th goes to white supremacist Richard Spencer. You know who Richard Spencer is, don't you? He's an alt-right, white nationalist activist who has attempted to implement what I would say is overtly racist ideas into everyday political thought. In fact, he is one of the people who actually invented the term alt-right. That is a fact. Oh, he's been out here spreading this brand of bigotry for a long time, well, at least about a decade, but they package it up nice, okay? They use terms like peaceful ethnic cleansing, and they use Donald Trump's campaign to make the case for a kinder, gentler type of white nationalism, okay? They try to portray white nationalism as a civil rights movement for white people. Okay, they are standing up for the oppressed and marginalized white man. You know, the white man who has oppressed and marginalized everyone else since the beginning of time. But now that the oppressed and marginalized are standing up for themselves and demanding the rights that we are guaranteed under the Constitution, the alt-right white men want to act like the victims because God forbid if everybody starts getting treated equally, okay? These alt-right folks don't believe in liberty and justice for all. They believe that if they empower others, then somehow their power will get stripped away from them. So all that trying to give us a different viewpoint about white nationalism is absolute BS. It's total nonsense. The alt-right is exactly who we thought they were, a bunch of crack-ass crackers, okay? I know, Charlemagne, you can't call them crack-ass crackers. Well, yes, I can. You know why? Because racist bigots are crack-ass crackers. Now, I want to give y'all historical context to the word, so you know why it's appropriate to use. It's appropriate to use because in the late 1800s, the word started being used because of the cracking of the whip. Okay, when they was beating my ancestors, the slaves. So when you call someone a cracker, just know that term should only be reserved for those really nasty, racist, bigoted white people, the ones who actually want to wipe out your existence, okay? The ones who don't think we should exist at all. That's who that term is reserved for. Now, I love moments like this because it's a white person listening to me right now, turning red, listening to my voice, mad that I'm using that term. Well, I'm going to play you a recording of Richard Spencer. This is from August 13th, 2017, the day after the far-right Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville turned into a violent scene that resulted in the murder of a white ally named Heather Heyer, okay, who was out there counter-protesting the nonsense of the Unite the Right, okay? Now, I'm going to play this audio, and after I play this audio, if you don't think Richard Spencer is a cracker-ass cracker, it's probably because you're a cracker-ass cracker, too. Roll it!
We are coming back here like 100 times. I am so mad. I am so mad at these people. They don't do this to me. We're going to ritualistically humiliate them. I am coming back here every weekend if I have to. Like, this is never over. I win. They lose. That's how the world works. Little they get ruled by people like me. Little octoroons. My ancestors enslaved those pieces of We're gonna win. I rule the world. Those pieces of get ruled by people like me. That's how the world works. We are gonna destroy this town.
Wow. Yeah, man. Listen, one of those words is a racial slur toward the Jewish community. And if you don't know what an octoroon is a dated term for someone who is 1/8 black. Now, the words should definitely offend you, but that's not what bothers me about these type of people. It's when he says things like, my ancestors enslaved those little pieces of, and when he says things like, I rule the effing world, those pieces of get ruled by people like me. See, it's that mentality that makes these people so dangerous, because some of these alt-right folks are politicians, people who are in actual control of legislation. Some of these people are police officers. They are heads of corporations. When they have the mentality that they want to rule us, when they are in these positions of power,
Oh, that's what makes them dangerous. Okay, they can call me a racial slur all day. Who cares? I just call them a crack ass, crack a back. But when these people with this mentality actually are in positions of power, watch out. So for anyone who is trying to defend the alt-right and say they are just a white civil rights movement defending the rights of the oppressed and marginalized white man, play this audio for him and tell him, shut the F up forever. Crack ass, cracker. Cracker ass, cracker. Please let Chelsea Handler give this crack-ass cracker Richard Spencer the biggest hee-haw.
Hee-haw, hee-haw. That is way too much Dan mayonnaise.
Donkey of the Day is brought to you by the Law Office of Michael S. Lamonsoff. Don't be...
So yeah, so there's that. And that's just Richard Spencer, right? So like for example, if I go to, let me do something here real quick.
Help from the police and other officials as much as the abuse has occurred in the presence of the party's children. Richard Spencer, a prominent figure for white nationalists, popularized the term alt-right and is the president of the National Policy Institute, a white nationalist group located in Alexandria, Virginia. For the Charlottesville community, Spencer most notably was an organizer of the allegedly called his babysitter sub-mediocre human being and told his wife, I recommend that you murder yourself because you have nothing to give this world. Yep, this is really happening. I'm Kiraman. Today is October 24th, and this is Now. Nina Kupriyanova alleges that her husband, Richard Spencer, abused her on multiple accounts. In their divorce papers, Kupriyanova claims that her husband dragged her downstairs, leaving bruises in 2011, and that she was physically assaulted while pregnant in 2014. In addition to his alleged physical abuse, Kupriyanova claims that her husband made the recurring statement, "The only language women understand is violence." She has been reluctant to seek help from the police and other officials as much as the abuse has occurred in the presence of the party's children. Richard Spencer, a prominent figure for white nationalists, popularized the term alt-right and is the president of the National Policy Institute, a white nationalist group located in Alexandria, Virginia. For the
So there's that, right? So 1 minute, let me do something here. Okay, so let's skip over it a little bit. So Alexander Dugin, and as you can see, Tucker Carlson interviewing him. Let me see here. So this is a video actually by conservative Glenn Beck, who actually is not a fan of Dugin. So let me play this for you.
A professor, and he's known to be an advisor to some of the most influential men in Russia. The Russian foreign minister, the second chairman of the state, the United Russia Party chief ideologist, and of course, President Vladimir Putin. Not only advising the Kremlin, but in 2008, Dugin became the head of the Department of Sociology of International Relations at Moscow State University. He's been pushing his ideology to Moscow's intellectual elite and young minds ever since. This is one of the most dangerous human beings on the planet today, Dugin. His philosophical doctrine uses a combination of geopolitics, political theory, and philosophy to incite Russian nationalism. Plainly stated, it's Russian national fascism. Dugin believes what Russia needs is, quote, a genuine, true, radically revolutionary and consistent fascist fascism. Duginites see Eurasia in a time tunnel as part of a greater Russian empire, land dominated by a superior culture and civilization. Quote, Everything will fall into place if we recognize Russia as a civilization, not just a country. In other words, Russia cannot be compared with other countries such as Switzerland, France, Germany, Belgium, England, Italy, and Spain. Russia should be compared with Europe as a whole, or with the Islamic world, or with the Chinese civilization. Similar to how Karl Marx believed working class people should be constantly informed of their place in society and become class conscious so they would unleash the struggle against the rich, Dugin's recipe calls for all of Europe to become aware of their race in order to bring forth racial struggle. This would not only unite Russians, but it would break apart the European Union bit by bit. So how does one go about making Europeans aware of their race? European right-wing extremism. In Europe, right-wing is nothing like it is here in America. Right-wing here is Tea Party, individual liberty, small government. Their right-wing is fascism, Golden Dawn, Marine Le Pen, Pegida. Any group pushing some sort of xenophobia will do. It's a dangerous play, one we have seen play out in history before with deadly consequences. Because once this sort of hate and fear is unleashed, there is absolutely no way to control it except with an iron fist. This is the architect, the man of thought, who's informing the man of action. And as you will see, the plan is being carried out in diabolical speed and fashion.
So there's that, and that's actually by conservative Glenn Beck, right? So, let's see here. And what's interesting is that I actually want to. Alex Jones was on Russian State TV. So this is actually this Dugin guy. Even though you have all these like Christian nationalists and stuff wanting to unite with Russia, Dugin is actually an occultist. A lot of people don't realize that. So here's a video of him actually reading Aleister Crowley, who was an occultist from England.
Я прошу почтить память умершего Алистера Кроули минутой молчания. Если есть в зале какие-нибудь зажигалки и спички, вы можете зажечь и минуту помолчать.
О мой Бог! Един Твой исток, един Твой дух, едино Твое изменение. Позволь мне воспеть Твои совершенства перед людьми. В образе шестиконечной звезды, сверкающей сквозь глупые своды, позволь мне объявить о Твоих совершенствах. Ты явился мне как очень старый Бог, достопочтимый Бог, господин времени с острым серпом. Ты явился мне как радостный и довольный Бог, исполненный могущества король, Отец в самом рассвете сил, с жезлом вселенной, коронованной короной духа. Ты явился мне с мечом и копьем, воинственный Бог в зияющей броне, в сопровождении свиты рыцарей. Ты явился мне как юный и зияющий Бог, Бог музыки и красоты, как юный Бог во всей своей силе, играющий на лире. Ты явился мне как белая пена, как части тела магической женщины, как богиня экстремальной любви золотым поясом. Ты явился мне как юный коварный мальчишка с твоей крылатой державой, как змеями, свившимися вокруг жезла. Ты явился мне как охотница посреди своей своры, как чистая девственная богиня, как луна между вековыми дубами. Но ничего из этого меня не обмануло. Я отбросил все эти видения и закричал: «Пойдите прочь!» И все они исчезли. И тут я сплавил вместе пылающую пятиконечную звезду и шестиконечную звезду в тигле своей души. Смотри, Вот появилась звезда 418 над всем этим. Но на этот раз ничего из этого меня не обмануло, потому что у короны 12 лучей, и все эти 12 суть одно. А сейчас я увидел противоположные, дурные вещи. Но они не существовали так же, как не существуешь и ты. Я видел две головы на одном туловище, которые постоянно бьются друг с другом, и поэтому все их мысли пребывают в смешении. В них я видел тебя. Я видел убийц мудрости, как черные обезьяны, они бормотали порочные глупости. В них я видел тебя. Я видел агрессивных матерей ада, разрывающих своих детей. О, вы, которые не имеете понимания, в них я видел тебя. Я видел безжалостных и полностью лишенных снисхождения существ, раздирающих, как гарпии, свою добычу. В них я видел тебя. Я видел огненных существ, гигантов, как вулканы, извергающих в бешенстве черную блевотину огня и дыма. В них я видел тебя. Я видел мерзавцев, скандальных агрессоров, эгоистов. Они были как люди, о Господи. Господи, они были так похожи на людей. И в них я видел тебя. Я видел воронов смерти, парящих с хриплыми криками над развратной землей. В них я видел тебя. Я видел духов лжи, прыгающих, как лягушки по земле, и по воде, и по мерзостному металлу, которые все разъедают и сам не сохраняется. В них я видел тебя. Я видел богопротивные перверсии, людей-быков, прикованных в бездне гниения, режущих друг друга языками в страданиях. В них я видел тебя. Я видел женщину, о Бог мой, я действительно видел ее, подобно роскошной даме, скрывающей под внешними формами черную обезьяну, подобно силуэтке, призывающей своими руками маленькое подобие человечка в ад. Я разглядел, что от головы до пояса это была женщина, от пояса до пят мужчина. В ней я видел тебя, потому что я сдал пароль закрытого дворца 480 и держал в руках поводья колесницы сфинкса, черные и белые. Но ни одна из этих вещей не обманула меня, поскольку своим мастерством я развил их все в 12 лучей короны. И эти 12 лучей были одним.
So there's that. And then, so if we go, okay. So as you can see, so now Tucker Carlson is interviewing this guy, pushing, see, what is it, transgenderism, AI and everything. In other words, they're trying to kind of push the conspiracy that like the West is pushing this transhumanist, occultic, demonic sort of ideology, and it's gonna snuff out the Christian sort of way of life or whatnot. So therefore, a lot of white supremacists and conservatives like Tucker, they want to have a czar basically in order to kind of like Christian nationalist czar basically to reinstill order, right?
Need a UGC video for your business? Find me and many other skilled creators on Fiverr. Or you could grab a top camera, add good
Alexander Dugin is a 62-year-old Russian academic philosopher. He spent his life in Moscow. He was an anti-Soviet dissident as a young man. And now he is famous the world over, in the English language press anyway, as, quote, Putin's brain. But he is not a political figure here in Russia. He is, once again, a philosopher. And his ideas are deeply offensive to some people. In August of 2022, his only daughter was murdered in Moscow when a car bomb killed her. U.S. intelligence says she was murdered by the Ukrainian government, and we take that at face value. But what's interesting is that, once again, Alexander Dugin is not a military leader. He's not a close daily advisor to Vladimir Putin. He is a writer who writes about big ideas. And for this, his books have been banned by the Biden administration in the United States. You cannot buy them on Amazon. Banning books in the United States because the ideas inside are too dangerous. He's often described, again in the English language press, as far right. We'll let you assess, but we wanted to talk to him about some of his ideas, these ideas that are so dangerous that his only daughter was murdered over them, and his book's been banned in the United States. And so we're happy to have him join us now. Mr. Dugin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's Tucker doing some propaganda, right? So they're saying that his daughter was murdered because his ideas were too dangerous. In other words, he's creating top cover by saying, poor Alexander Dugin, it's the degenerate West who killed your daughter because your ideas are, so dangerous, right? You're being canceled, right? The ultimate form of cancel, right? Cancel culture. So with that being said, that's very interesting right there because actually there was he basically talks about like reconquering old territory. Like he wants to take over countries that's the Russia used to own. So I guess, according to Tucker, I guess those are good ideas.
Thank you for inviting me and welcome to Moscow.
Of course, thank you. So we were talking off camera. Actually, we were having a conversation that we were not going to film, just interested to meet you. But what you said was so interesting that we got a couple of cameras and put this together. And my question to you is, what do you think is happening in the English language countries? And I said, all of them, United States, Canada, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, all at once decided to seemed to turn against themselves. You know, this great turmoil, and some of the behaviors seem very self-destructive. And where do you think, as an observer, that comes from?
So I could just suggest, express my reading of.
So Tucker's saying they seem very self-destructive. What are those ideas, Tucker, that you think are self-destructive? And let me guess, what, immigration, women's rights, right? Things that are essentially what he considers to be antithetical to him, right?
Of that. It demands a little patience. So I think that everything started with individualism. So individualism, that was a wrong understanding of the human nature, of the nature of man. When you identify individualism with the man, with the human nature, you cut all the relations to everything else. So you have very special idea of the subject, philosophical subject, as individual. And everything started in the Anglo-Saxon world with Protestant reform and with nominalism. Before that, nominalist attitude that there are no ideas, only things, only individual things. So individual, it was the key and is still key concept that was put in the center of liberal ideology. And liberalism, as in my reading, it is a kind of historical and cultural and political and philosophical process of liberation of individual, of any kind of collective identity, collective or that transcends individual. And that started with refuse of Catholic Church as collective identity, of empire, Western empire as collective identity. After that, it was a revolt against a national state as collective identity in favor of purely civil society. After that, there was a big fight of the 20th century between liberalism, communism, and fascism, and liberalism has won once more.
Yes.
So, and after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was only liberalism, and Francis Fukuyama has pointed out correctly that there are no more any ideologies except of liberalism, and liberalism that was liberation of this individual from any kind of collective identity. There were only two collective identities to liberate from: gender identity, because it is collective identity. You are man or woman collectively, so you could not be alone. So liberation from gender, and that has led to transgenders, to LGBT, and new form of sexual individualism. So sex is something optional. And that was not just
So he's basically saying that because of, and this is something that other kind of quasi pro-Russian people on YouTube like Jay Dyer, who's an Orthodox, what they like talking about is like this atomization, right, caused by liberalism. So they almost kind of argue that liberalism is almost an occultic Masonic force that through alchemy actually debases the culture, right? And actually creates this atomization of people and subjectivity and postmodernism. In other words, they kind of consider postmodernism to be the logical conclusion of liberalism. So as a result, you have to reject that in order to go back to more, ancient, medieval, classical ways of thinking, right? In which you had institutions that did not separate the church and the state and everything. And what Dugin's kind of saying is that like because of individualism, people had the choice to basically express themselves the way they wanted to, whether that's, let's just say that they wanted to change their gender or something like that, right? So in other words, they're betraying the human collective by choosing their own individual pursuit of happiness. Thus, as a result, Alexander Dugin's philosophies are in theory incompatible with the West. Whether and this is transgenderism aside, right? Just the whole notion of the pursuit of happiness is antithetical to the worldview of Alexander Dugin. And what's more disingenuous about Tucker is that Tucker says that he revolted against the Soviets. That's not true. He's very pro-Soviet. He's ashamed that the Soviet Union fell. He was just trying to do his own thing in the Soviet Union, and they clamped down on him because of his association with even in Soviet Union they had neo-Nazis over there, and Dugin was a part of the National Bolshevik Party. The National Bolshevik Party, real quick, let me pull this up for you. So even so, that's what I'm saying. Tucker Carlson, it cannot be trusted. He bends to the truth for his own purposes, while making it sound like he's the truth teller because he's saying things that are politically incorrect. But sure, they are politically incorrect because they're bigoted, racist things that he's advocating for, whether he wants to admit it or not. But he has to play victim in order to kind of garner enough audience to make himself seem like he's, on the right side of history, right? Or whatever. It's goofy, like, but woman it. Okay, so for example, right? This is the National Bolshevik Party. So operated from 1993 to 2007 as a Russian political party with a political program of National Bolshevism. The NPB became a prominent member of the Other Russia coalition of opposition parties. Its members are known as Nazbols. So there have been similar NPB groups in other countries. Its official publication, the newsletter Lamonka, derived in its name from other party leaders' surname and from the idiomatic Russian word for a grenade. So let me do something here real quick. Alright, sorry about that. So let me see here. So Russian courts banned the organization and it never officially registered as a political party. In 2010, its leader, Edward Limonov, founded a new party called the Other Russia of E.V. Limonov. So as you can see here, ideology, National Bolshevism. That doesn't sound like anti-Soviet, Tucker Carlson. Russian ultranationalism, neo-Sovietism, Russian irredentism, anti-Western sentiment, left-wing nationalism, Soviet patriotism, Euroscepticism, going against the European Union, NATO, anti-establishment. It has a syncretic political position. So the NPB has denied any links to fascism, stating that all forms of anti-Semitism, xenophobia, racism were against the party's principles, yada yada. But if you look at their symbol, is obviously kind of a ripoff of the swastika and everything like that. It's just a very, and I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than what it seems. But at the end of the day, like, it's very interesting that Tucker over here, like I said, he thinks his audience is stupid. Like, we can't look this up. You know what I'm saying? Like, so here we go. Alexander Dugin. And he's a big proponent of ethno-nationalism, right? So I can hear him, like, we can hear him talk and dribble or whatever. Maybe there's no point. Let me just read. So Alexander Dugin is a Russian far-right political philosopher and leading theorist of Russian neo-Eurasianism. Born into a military intelligence family, Dugin was an anti-communist dissident during the 1980s and joined the ultra-nationalist and anti-Semitic Pamyat organization. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, he co-founded the National Bolshevik Party, which espoused National Bolshevism with Edward Lemonov. In 1993, after leaving in 1998, in 1997, Dugin published his most well-known work, Foundations of Geopolitics, in which he called on Russia to rebuild its influence through alliances and conquests in order to challenge the purported rival Atlanticist empire led by the United States. Dugin found that Eurasia Party in 2022 and continued to develop its ideology in books including the Fourth Political Theory. His views have been characterized as fascist or neo-fascist, although he explicitly rejects fascism along with liberal democracy and Marxism, instead advocating for a conservative revolution against Enlightenment ideas in Russia. In other words, the rights of men, the rights of individuality, the rights to free speech. In other words, he's a medievalist, right? So he has drawn on the writings of René Guénon, who is a fascist, who was into a bunch of esoteric stuff, like the occult stuff I showed you earlier. Julius Evola, far-right Italian person who was very popular in the contemporary alt-right movement. Carl Schmitt, a member of the Nazi Party. And Martin Heidegger, who, despite being a well-known kind of existential philosopher, supported the Nazis. So there's that. So yeah, so then also, I'm just going to kind of, so this is about Dugin some more. So very interesting. So he was inspired by a bunch of fascist people and all this type of stuff, and you should definitely read into him. But he's a unique person because he's gone to inspire other people, such as I would consider, he might deny it, people like Jay Dyer. So Jay Dyer is a person on YouTube. You can go look at his videos and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is that he converted to Orthodoxy. And a lot of his videos are kind of, even though you can say they're interesting, they're coming from this whole perception of like the West is degenerate, Hollywood is evil, there's subliminal messages, and you can't trust what the media is because it's all a part of the New World Order, United Nations, World Economic Forum, Bilderberg, Davos type stuff. And he even goes into kind of arguing that there's an occult agenda basically. And this position, and I'm not saying that he's an agent of Russia or anything like that, but I definitely certainly think that he agrees a lot with what people like Dugin have to say. But Jay Dyer is another person who a lot of people don't really talk about. when it comes to things. But for example, Jay Dyer, let me do something here real quick. Okay, so this is a video that I'm going to play about Jay Dyer and his kind of beliefs and all that type of stuff. So 1 minute.
Byzantine theory, the Byzantine view, which, traditionally Russia continued on that tradition of church and state relationships, and he's writing against the Western democratic Enlightenment libertarian ethos, and he's critiquing it in a very profound, solid way, I would say. And within the first chapter, he says, look, every society needs religious belief. And so he says, ironically, even if you don't believe in religion, it still is the norm in all of human history that societies have a religion. So he's basically just saying, even if you thought that religion wasn't true, it still makes sense that the social order has some kind of binding religious force. And he says that any time that the church or the state have tried to alter this relationship that was the norm for the imperium, what you get is these weird aberrations. And he says something to the effect of, he says, anytime that you divide the church from the state will run the church. So basically you're going to get some kind of state-controlled religion, which is ironic because oftentimes constant criticism of Orthodox is, you have Caesaro-papism, you have the Caesar is the Pope of the church. Well, of course, that's not actually true, because if it was, there would not be many heretical emperors, there would not be many martyrs in the church who were actually put to death by heretical emperors, and the church would have been turned into a heresy machine a long time ago following one of the heretical emperors, but in fact it hasn't. So the fact that the faith sustains a people, even in the midst of these things, in the midst of these historic controversies, shows that, in fact, what most people think is that the religion is in a society is based on the state. Actually, the other way around is what's true. The state needs the religious faith. The state is based on the faith, and anytime the state casts it off, the state will soon wither and die. It may even turn into an atheistic, persecuting Bolshevik type faith, but that no longer exists. That has died, or at least it no longer exists in Russia. It's being set up in America apparently, but
you have made your dwelling in the heights.
So there's that. And then, like, Jay Dyer's an interesting person.
In A Dance with Dragons and Season 5 of Game of Thrones, a knight called Robert Strong appears in King's Landing.
Sorry, I feel like it's so surprising to me that that Dyer hasn't made it into like the larger circuit of like the Majority Report and people talking about him, stuff like that, because it's very interesting, because that Jay Dyer guy you heard talking, let me see here, Jay Dyer, Nick Fuentes, Alex Jones. So there was a video, actually, I need to find it, but it was like Jay Dyer was like hanging out with like Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones before like the whole like not too far removed from like the January 6th stuff. So it's very interesting that like even like the circles, I'm not saying that he's like buddies with the Fuentes or something, but just I would consider them on the same side of the political spectrum. But there's that. And really, I could go more into this. I mean, I think a lot of people know, but then there's also this interview that, like I said at the beginning of the video, that Tucker did with Carlson, that Tucker Carlson did with Vladimir Putin, in which he's basically just kind of just talking about this like history and all this type of stuff. So I'm just gonna jump to a random section. Actually, no, I'll just play it from the beginning.
2024 at about 7 p.m. in the building behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview, as you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started, what's happening, and most pressingly, how it might end. One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat? And that's your justification. And the answer we got shocked us. Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going back to the 8th century. And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption. But we concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after more than 2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not. Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine. So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks. And with that, here it is. Mr. President, thank you. On February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country. And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
It's not that America, the United States, was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation?
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable, serious talk.
Because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from? The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862, when the townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince, Rurik, from Scandinavia to reign. In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood. And in Novgorod, there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the country. In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's young son, because Rurik had died by that time, came to Kiev. He ousted two brothers who apparently had once been members of Rurik's squad. So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, the great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity. From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen. Why? Because of the single territory, integrated economic ties, one and the same language, and, after the baptism of Russia, the same faith and rule of the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape. Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne. But after he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons. The throne was passed not directly from father to eldest son, but from the prince who had passed away to his brother, then to his sons in different lines. All this led to the fragmentation and the end of Rus as a single state. There was nothing special about it. The same was happening then in Europe. But the fragmented Russian state became an easy prey to the empire created earlier by Genghis Khan. His successors, namely Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part, including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities, simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed to preserve some part of their sovereignty. And then a unified Russian state began to take shape with its center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands, including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was even called the Lithuanian-Russian Duchy, because Russians were a significant part of this population. They spoke the old Russian language and were Orthodox. But then there was a unification, the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland. A few years later,
Okay, like I said, you can watch the video yourself, but like I said, it's kind of a lot of different reasons why, I think people in the MAGA camp or neo-conservative or paleo-conservative politics like Tucker Carlson support Russia. But like I said, outside of the pragmatic reasons, besides, peace and all this type of stuff that, Trump's talking about, there is an undercurrent of a kind of like a white supremacist, white nationalist, like pan-Europa unity sort of project, as I think, seen through the paranoia of people like Tucker Carlson. So I'm just going to wrap it up there. So take care. All right. Bye.